Hi, this is Dwayne from Slab Stitcher, and today we're going to show you how to make the game room clock with the Royal Flush card set and new clock template. Stay tuned. I'm going to take this hunk of walnut and we're going to make a clock using Slab Stitcher's newest template. For making the clock, we're going to actually add our Royal Flush cards into it to make a game clock for a game room. We're going to use the main frame later on in the production. We got our clamps, we got a router, two drills with two different bits because I don't like changing bits. And our chisel, some glue brush, and a couple other jigs that we're going to be using that we'll show you in the video. Thank you. With this template, we do recommend using double-sided tape, even though I don't like double-sided tape. We're going to need double-sided tape on it to route out the perimeter to hold this fast. The clamps are going to get in the way of that. So one thing with using double-sided tape is if you're using a thicker double-sided tape like this stuff, you're going to have to take that into account when you set your depth for your router, because your router is going to be up a little bit more proud. I like to use double-sided carpet tape. It is so thin, it's ridiculous. You don't really need to take that into account. These new playing card bow ties are engraved a little bit deeper to allow for some sanding, but there's only so much engraving, so you definitely have to account for thicker double-sided tape. So we're going to take our template and put some double-sided tape on it. Before I stick this fast, I want to position it on the piece so I get some of the character of the crotch material in the clock without routing out the bow ties. So I think I'm going to have this thing going a little diagonal so that the only part of the crotch that gets erased by the 10 is going to be in the center, and we'll still be able to see it even though we're kind of cockeyed to the grain. So I'm actually going to trace this center one so I know where my placement is. I need a pencil. Using Slab Stitcher's official pencil, which you can get when you order anything from Slab Stitcher. We'll throw a pencil in while supplies last. But I'm just going to trace this one for reference, for placement. And now, double-sided carpet tape is really, really thin, and the backer is also thin. It takes a little bit of work to get that paper off of there, but it does come off. All right, lining up my pencil mark. Pressing that down. I'm going to wiggle that, make sure it does not move. But I'm also going to use clamps because I'm going to be doing a lot of routing, a lot of moving, and I trust clamps more than I trust tape. I positioned the clamps to be able to route the majority of the clock, and then I can reposition and come to the other side. So I'm going to drill some pilot holes in the bow tie area to start the bit from a standing position. All right. Suck all this dust out so it doesn't get in our way. We'll be making more dust. This vacuum will be back in. This is where we're going to set our height for our bit or depth of cut. We'll take 2 inlays, position our clock template, our clock movement template over top of that. And we'll just home the router just like that. This is where it's pivotal. If you're using a thick double-sided tape, you're going to want to put a small sliver of double-sided tape on the back of both of these so that you elevate them and increase your depth of cut to make up for the template being that much higher off your workpiece. So now that we have that, we can start routing. We'll put it in the first hole. I like to route with my power button on my router towards me. It keeps my router oriented in the cut, the same position the whole time. All right, somebody's going to yell at me because I don't have eye protection, but here we go. Stop your router, let it come to a complete stop before raising it up out of the template. If your router's still spinning and you lift it up and you tilt it out, you do have a chance to take that bit right into the side of your template, which will ruin this entire template. This isn't like our master pack with the main frame with replaceable templates. Router will build up some dust. This dust will impede your process and narrow down the slot and the recess for your inlay. So we want to get that off with some air. Positioning the router the exact same way. The buttons are towards me. I'm going to reroute the perimeter. All right, just a little bit of a nip you could hear down this bottom section that wasn't cut in the original route. You don't need to watch me route the rest of the bow ties. We are going to move into routing out these little digit slots. So we don't have to put numbers around the clock. We ended up putting these little slots in to represent the numbers. So this little jig here is going to help you center your router bit on these slots. I put a couple holes in these jigs just to hand tighten some screws. Put that down in there. Take a 3/16 bit. And create a standing position for your router. You can just blow this little bit of dust out of here. So now we can stand our bit up. I'm going to stand on this side and then hold it firmly because it's a little bit more of a snug hole. Hold your router firmly when you turn it on. That's all there is to it, to the numbered slots. So I'll fast forward, route this all out, and show you the later progress. Now that we have everything routed out onto our next process, I'm going to hold off chiseling the corners of the bow ties until the template has been removed, but we still need a template in place because we want to use the perimeter of the template to make the perimeter of the clock. There's a couple different ways you can do that. You can either take it to the scroll saw and cut closely to the template, or what I'm going to try today is using the guide bushing against the edge of my template, route that out so that when the flush trim bit, we use the flush trim bit, it'll ride against the wood instead of the template, which will prolong the template's edge. We're also going to use one of Whiteside's router bits for an edge treatment. I like the chamfer, the 2302 chamfer bit from Whiteside to ease the edge, but today I think we're going to use the 2000C 1/8 inch roundover just to break that upper edge on that clock. All these bits are available on our website. We started selling Whiteside router bits. We love Whiteside. They really have our backs. They make great bits. So we're going to use the router to make that perimeter cut around. I'm going to start on this edge here because I can balance the router and feed it in and then make my cut. That's a nice cut, if I do say so myself. I think that's actually going to be deep enough for us to do what we need to do. We can actually, at this point, we can take this template off. So when we run the jigsaw around, we're not scratching this template. We have a surface for our flush trim bit to ride against. So let's pry it off. Easy pressure the whole way around. Work it from each piece of tape. Don't be too aggressive. Acrylic is still fragile. Look at that. Perfect. So now you can kind of see where we're at with that. I'm going to go ahead, clamp this thing down, and I'm going to chisel my corners a while. It's that easy. I just walk up on the corner, little bit at a time from both sides until that point meets together, and then go down. Apparently I made a mistake. Pulled the jig off too soon. It's okay. The next step is not truly that critical, but it is necessary to make a clock. I'm going to place this thing right back where it was. I have the pencil mark from the initial setup that I can put this thing right back here. Ta-da! we made a clock centering jig to go onto here. Snaps in there. Take a 5/16 bit and drill into this area. Now I made sure this bit worked before I used it, but apparently it wants to be, there we go. It is snug. So I'm not going to drill the whole way through because I'm on top of my good work table. So I am going to drill a little bit. That'll give me a starter hole. And if I continue to drill through this acrylic, I'm going to end up elongating this center hole, and it's going to throw off future clock projects. So now that we have that hole, we can pull this template off again. Comes off easier the second time. All right. Everything is now chiseled. We can pull this out of the clamps. And I can actually drill that hole through, keeping as straight as I possibly can, because we have this little clock mechanism that has to go through that 5/16 hole for that shaft. All right, now that that hole is drilled, we can tap this out, and my clock is actually going to face like this. I'm going to flip this over, and here's where our main frame comes in to play. Here is a template to route out for this clock mechanism if you want to make it flush with the back of your clock inset. So we're going to snap this into the main frame, and it comes with this clock movement centering jig. So you can pop this in as well. That'll get us centered in that hole that we drilled through the other side. So I think I'm positioned like this. It doesn't matter with this clock movement if you don't get this perfectly to the 12, it's still going to spin around. You got to set the time. So I'm thinking my clock is in this position. This will make this perfect. So I can come in and clamp both sides. This also has holes in it so that you can run a screw in there and pull that piece right back out. I'm going to start with the original 1/4 inch depth that we had for the bow ties and the digits and route this out a while. Again, it needs repeated. Leave the router set until it stops. I'll sell you more templates. That's what I do. So we did find out that our vacuum has a clog in it, so it's not sucking as well as it should. So I am going to have to blow some of this out. This particular clock mechanism is 5/8 of an inch. thick, so we will have to go down 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to go down 1/2 inch. Actually, I need a larger one. That'll give me my 1/2 inch. If you use a thinner material, we're using, I think, 1 1/8 walnut. If you use a thinner material, you're not going to be able to go as deep and flush up the clock mechanism. But I want to go a full 5/8. I'm actually going to just eye it up to stick an 1/8 inch above. Like so. All right, we're going to take this one apart. Make sure I don't lose any of these tiny little bolts. I am a little cockeyed, but I don't care. I have 2 rubber washers on there that I'm going to be taking off, but that fits nicely. There's my clock. So we are going to have to get a longer shaft for this mechanism, which they do sell. We actually have some on order, so that we can attach the clock through the bow tie as well. Next step, cutting this out. Now we're going to take our jigsaw and we're going to cut the perimeter of this clock out, staying to the outside of the recess to give us to stay away from this clock face so we don't make any divots, and then transfer that right to the pilot bit. There we are. Check it out. Now we can just take it on the router table, get that pilot of that flush trim bit right against this flat spot, and flush it up. This is what's known as a starter pin. This allows us to come in here, push against the starter pin, and then pivot into the cutter. Instead of just coming loosely into the cutter and having something grab and spin us, we can come into the starting pin and rotate into the cutter. I'd say that looks pretty good. Now we're going to install all of our inlays. Now we just add some glue into our recesses. Making sure the ace of spades is pointing upwards. Now that we have all of them in place, we're going to sand this top flat. Now grab my other router with the 1/8 inch white side round over bit. We're just going to ease this edge a little bit. And I'm going to sand a little bit more. Blow this out so you can see a little bit more of the detail. I actually still have the template here with some sticky tape. What I'm going to do is stick this back on lightly. Take my centering hole jig. Get my pilot bit in there. Pull it out beyond my table. That'll give me the spot for the clock hardware. To pop through. I want to put a coat of finish on this before we put the clock all together. So let's fast forward through the video and show the finished product. Here we are with our finished game room clock using Slab Stitcher's new Royal Flush bow tie inlays and clock template. Turned out pretty nice. Walnut with maple inlays. I like it. I'd buy it. So buy the kit. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.